Let me be very clear from the start. I am not attacking anyone personally. I am critiquing a method. I am critiquing a narrative. And I'm critiquing the way history is being emotionally framed in a way that misleads the descendants of the victims of chattel slavery, especially those in the African diaspora, in the Caribbean, and here in the United States. Because when you distort history with sympathy-driven storytelling, you just don't miseducate. You disarm people politically and intellectually. Now, the TikTok claims Africans were paying ransoms, crossing oceans, writing kings and governors, rescuing enslaved people, and then reframes the system as the European slave trade, as if African states were merely passive observers. That framing is not neutral. That is responsibility laundering through language. King Gezo. Let's talk about one of the central examples used. He was the king of Dahomey. Under Gezo, Dahomey was one of the most aggressive slave-raiding, slave-exporting states in West Africa. The Agolje, often romantically misnamed the Amazons, were not cultural icons. They were a militarized slave capture force, conscripting young girls and destroying villages to feed the Atlantic supply chain. To present Gezo as a sympathetic rescuer without the context is not history, it's image rehabilitation. Yes, it is possible that isolated rescue attempts may have occurred, but isolated anecdotes do not overturn a documented transatlantic system that depended on African capture, African detention, and African sale. Anecdotes do not cancel shipping laws. They do not cancel slave ports. They do not cancel coastal forts. They do not cancel African state economies built on export of human beings. What troubles me is not just the historical distortion, it's the emotional manipulation. By centering the grief of alleged kings and elites, the narrative shifts sympathy upward toward the traffickers, while the millions of rural victims became background noise. That is not accidental, that is rhetorical strategy. And this is why American descendants of victims of slavery should be deeply concerned. When African complicity is softened, accountability is blurred. When accountability is blurred, reparative clarity collapses. And when reparative clarity collapses, Black descendants in the Americas are told once again to settle for symbolism instead of justice. Now, I don't hold a formal degree in history. What I do hold is decades of independent study and lived political consequences as a contributor to the new abolitionist movement. And I will not watch Black audiences be targeted emotionally and miseducated with comforting myths while calling it scholarship. History is not therapy. Truth is not always comforting, but liberation begins with honesty. I wrote a full academic breakdown of this on my Substack. The link is in the description. Read it and share it. And don't let anyone play with our history for emotional effect.